Welcome, everyone. My name is Ron D'Andrea. I'm a founder and managing partner of Global Performance Group. We are a performance improvement company dedicated to helping individuals gain the skills, the knowledge, and the confidence necessary to create profitable, sustainable agreements, even with the most demanding customers in our current virtual selling environment. With me today is Will Reddick. Will is head of marketing and is responsible for bringing this all together today. We're going to spend a short amount of time discussing a critical topic in today's virtual selling world. How do you add value to every customer interaction? Our focus today is how you can lead a more provocative customer dialogue that transforms the buyer's understanding of his or her own needs, their goals, their outcomes, so you're able to create, shape, and sell value during a time period when it's harder than ever to build relationships and create a sense of urgency to act. The end result, you're able to differentiate yourself, your solution, the partnership, and you do it in a way that productively challenges the status quo. We've got about 25 minutes together. We're going to save 10 minutes or so at the end for questions. So as you think of a question, use the Q&A button you see at the bottom of your screen, enter it, click on the Q&A, enter your question. We're going to take questions at the end, okay? Let's get started because we got a lot to cover. And we're going to start with customers today. Today, customers are better informed than ever. On average, 70% of the sales process is completed before a salesperson is contacted. According to Forrester, who is a well-known sales effectiveness and consulting company, 77% of buyers surveyed reported that sellers didn't understand their business well enough to add true value, and that 57% of sellers appeared unprepared for the first meeting. They didn't demonstrate their ability to add value to the conversation. In other words, they provided little collaboration, little innovation. Both of them are critical for value creation. So customers are frustrated. They have little or no time to waste, and they expect more from the people calling on them. Buyers are harder to please than ever. They're savvy, they're well-trained, they're very demanding. They know that the more they ask for, the more they get. They're focused on minimizing risk as they work to achieve quantifiable results, and at the same time, paying the right price and getting maximum value and service in return. And finally, decision makers are less inclined to be loyal. Not only is there rapid turnover today with the number of baby boomers leaving the workforce, the way people buy fundamentally changed in 2008, 2009, and then again in 2020 with the advent of COVID-19. And so one thing we can all agree on, the world is never going back to the way that it was. More and more decision makers are supplier agnostic, meaning they aren't tied to the companies that they have worked with in the past. They're making decisions today based on which suppliers can best guarantee success for them in the future. So it's not enough to have the perfect product, even at a reasonable price, because customers have lots of great options today. Which creates the question, what does it take to win deals with those buyers that have an abundance of choice, very high expectations, and little loyalty to spare? We have to create value. We have to create value with every interaction. We have to demonstrate that the buyer is paying the right price and getting maximum value and service in return. But before we go any further, we really should define what is value. Value is simply satisfaction. And by satisfaction, we refer to the salesperson's job of really helping the client understand and prioritize the depth and breadth of his or her or their needs, and then work with the key stakeholders to co-create the right solution that meets this depth and breadth of needs. So they're getting the right solution at the right time, at the right price to drive the right results. The other thing to remember is that value is a perception. There is no absolute value. What is value in the eyes of one person may not be value in the eyes of another. But the most important fact to remember is that perception is reality. So if you perceive value exists, it exists. If I believe it and I see the value, then it exists. If I don't see the value, if I don't perceive the value, then for me, it does not exist. So how do we create that value? How do we make sure that there is a strong perception of value on the part of the decision makers? And then how do we move that to reality? Because the goal is to be able to create the value, to be able to shape the value, and to be able to sell the value, to maximize its impact. That's what we mean by selling value. We've talked about creating value for customers in previous webinars as well. Yeah, you create value for customers by helping them challenge themselves and the status quo. Just because something has been done one way in the past, it doesn't mean it should be done the same way in the future, especially when our whole world is changing around us. We have to find new ways to help all of the different stakeholders focus on the achievement of their own specific objectives, as well as the corporate objectives. So what's most important, both personally and professionally from a business standpoint, challenging the status quo. We have also talked about increasing value by expanding the need set to move past the known needs that everybody's selling to undiscovered needs, needs that buyers don't even know that they have, but you're going to help them understand it and recognize them. Unconsidered needs, needs that the buyers know exist, but they have not considered your firm or your solution as the way to satisfy that need. They haven't considered you. And underappreciated needs, needs that exist that the buyer's aware of, but because of bandwidth or focus or priorities, they haven't paid attention to it. They don't see how it's impacting their top and bottom line. Underappreciated needs, you can help them appreciate how satisfying those needs, how you can expand the buying criteria from a personal, technical, and business needs standpoint enables you to create and shape more value. The third area that we've discussed is creating value by asking questions that are qualitatively different. Questions not only you don't know the answer to as a salesperson asking the question, but your buyers also don't know the answer until they begin to respond. These striker questions help get beneath surface wants to the underlying needs, and that's what enables you to create the optimal solution and create and shape the right value for that optimal solution. But we know the sales dialogue is more than just asking questions. It's also about sharing information, sharing insights, sharing perspectives, examples. In essence, sharing nuggets of value. These pieces of information, these nuggets that have huge value for your customer. You know, in our pressure-filled world where people are so distracted and so deluged with information, we have to help buyers focus on the data that will enable them to make the right decision. So these nuggets of value add new information, new perspectives, new insights. They share your experience, they give relevant examples. We've talked. The key to shaping nuggets of value is to not only share the insight, the information, the experience, or the examples, but also to explain why this is important to the buyer. In our fast-paced, pressure-filled world, where the average unbroken attention span may be as little as short as 10 seconds, people are deluged with information. We assume decision makers will understand the importance of what we tell them, but so often that is just not the case. So not only are buyers deluged, they're distracted, they're disengaged, the average American worker is a notoriously poor listener. It's up to us to be sure that they not only understand the nugget, but they're also clear on why or how this nugget impacts them. We have to clearly tell them why this is important to you. Let's take a look at a couple of examples of what we mean by nuggets of value. When we talk about nuggets of value, think about sharing insights about the marketplace, your industry, or your clients' competitors. Whenever possible, use third-party data. Do you have information about the marketplace? What revenue, for instance, does the marketplace represent? Is there potential competition for your customer increasing or decreasing? What about the average cost of entry to the market? Think about how this information could impact your decision maker. You know, to give you an example, we have one client we're working with that's experiencing rising raw material costs. You know, a phenomenon, especially in the building industry these days, that's been hit hard by COVID, and there's a lot of home renovation going on. In order to preserve margins, they needed to raise prices. However, they were concerned that their customers would seek other options as new lower price competitors entered the market. For them, data or insight as to the cost of entry of new competitors to successfully launch in the market and become a competitor was very useful. So to create a nugget of value for a client like that, it could sound something like the average cost to enter the market is a minimum of 100 million US dollars, which is one reason why your market is so stable right now. No new entrants have been identified over the past 6 to 9 months. So not only does this solidify your client base, it's a good time for you to increase your pricing by as much as 10%. So as we discussed, it's not just a nugget, it's why this nugget is important to you. Don't assume the buyer knows or will understand on his or her own. You've got to be clear, you've got to be specific, and you've got to be very precise with your message. What about challenges to growth or profitability? We're working with one client in the service industries, which is experiencing a lack of qualified workers. So any insight about reducing staff turnover, increasing employee engagement and satisfaction was valuable for this company to have in order to compete. So remember also that to keep the best nuggets are ones that are as concise as possible. This is one of those situations where more information is not better information. Attention spans are short, we've already said that, and we want nuggets to be memorable so that they're easily repeatable. Well, we want to give stakeholders the words they can use internally to explain why your firm provides the highest ROI, why it's the best value solution. So thinking about the nuggets of value, thinking about the ideas you have for innovation and creativity, can you keep them clear? Can you keep them concise, precise? Are they memorable? Can someone else repeat that nugget of value easily? If so, it has even greater impact. What about cutting edge technology? Do you have information about new innovative solutions soon to be launched? How will the innovation positively impact your prospective client? For instance, sustainability. It's a really hot topic today, especially with this focus on climate change all over the news this morning. There's a new saying in industry, people, planet, and profit. So companies are looking to promote sustainability in environmental, protecting the earth, social, promoting inclusion, and economic, enabling prosperity. And many procurement organizations, for instance, are charged with finding sources in line with principles of social, economic, and or ecological sustainability. So they're looking beyond quality, beyond cost, beyond dependability. So if you're dealing with a large manufacturer seeking ways to reduce costs and simultaneously achieve measurable sustainability goals, rather than lowering your price to gain their agreement, what if you provided more value for the same price and helped them achieve a key measure of success like sustainability? So one example that was used by a client of ours was the number of electric vehicles will increase from 711,000 in the US today and 3 million electric vehicles globally to 125 million electric vehicles globally by the year 2030. Think about this nugget of value that shows the growth in number and the utility of electric vehicles and how this fact might impact an organization that relies on highway transportation to move their goods. So remember, it's not just the nugget, It's the so what, why this is important to you, that creates the impact. Another area to add nuggets of value are potential pitfalls, problems encountered by others, and ideas as to how they can be avoided. They all make excellent nuggets of value. Is there a problem with potential new legislation, for instance, coming down the pike? What about staffing issues? What's going on with personnel? Examples like the UK withdrawing from the EU. What is the problem? How can it impact your customer? And what should they do differently to avoid this pitfall or minimize the impact? So what is the problem? What is the pitfall? What have other companies done to either manage the situation, avoid the pitfall, or solve the problem? Huge amount of value in that for your customers. And today, customers are looking for innovation. There is increasing product parity in so many marketplaces. So being able to leverage or create key differentiators can make the difference for you between success and failure. Since the two things companies need to grow today, according to the Gallup organization, are collaboration and innovation, you've got to give your clients both. So you'll ask the questions, you'll get people thinking, you want to challenge the status quo, and then share a nugget of value that gets to the why beneath the what. In essence, it creates the so what, why this is important to you. And obviously, cutting costs, cost-cutting measures that don't sacrifice quality are always welcome. How about sharing ideas with your clients for cost-cutting, but also articulate the impact of the savings and how that money can be better spent to foster growth. You obviously can never divulge confidential information, but citing relevant examples in the public domain within the industry or in adjacent verticals, because they have to have relevancy to the person listening and hearing it. This relevant nugget of value can provide new insights and add tremendous value, not only to the conversation, but to the overall solution that you are putting together. And finally, we're going to talk about another nugget of value for sharing information about how effectively people can work with each other. How can people work more effectively with each other? For instance, I'll give you an example. We were working with a client recently on coaching and how do you get maximum performance out of their salespeople. They were willing to embark on a training program, in quotes. So we're talking to the head of training and development, and what we shared with them, the nugget of value was training supported by manager coaching yields an 88% skill improvement compared to an improvement level of 28% with training alone. So if you're looking to triple the impact of your investment, you need to provide not only the training, but the coaching that supports the training. The other thing we shared with them was that training supported by coaching and reinforcement yields an ROI of 70 to 80% on average compared to the training alone. So an increase of 70% higher rather than just training alone. So what this is telling you is do it right or don't do it at all. If you're going to gain the maximum return on the investment that you're making in terms of budget, in terms of time, in terms of effort, in terms of lost selling opportunity by your salespeople, make sure that every sales training initiative includes coaching and reinforcement. Nugget of value. Share with them information, gave them new insight, brought in third-party data, made it a measurable, memorable nugget that they could share with other stakeholders in the decision-making process to explain why we need to work with a full-service firm that isn't focused on delivering a training program. They're really focused on creating sustainable behavior change. So nuggets of value educate, they persuade, they engage busy, distracted, hard to please buyers. In today's world, you've got to give these buyers a reason to want to talk with you. And quickly what happens is you gain the reputation. Every time I talk to her, she tells me something I didn't know. Every time I talk to him, I learn something new. If you are the person that brings these insights, this information, these examples, this experience to your buyers, you're the person that they want to pick up the phone for or get on the Zoom call for, because they know it's always going to be worth their time. You're adding tremendous value. So not only are you giving them the right information to help them make the right decision, you're also creating value for that in specific conversation that they're having. And obviously then that impacts the way they feel about you, the relationship that you've created, the service level that you provide, and the quality of the solutions. Nuggets of value, really important. We've just hit a little bit today on what are nuggets of value. We talked a bit about how to implement them, but we haven't talked very much on how to sustain the quality. That's really what our job is, working with large sales organizations that are premium price, premium value, that are looking to differentiate themselves and win sustainable business, not based on price, but rather on best value, highest return on investment, best return on capital. We do a tremendous amount of work with buyers, those people who are making the decisions, the professional buyers like procurement, but also CFOs, CEOs, COOs, heads of technology, et cetera. Those people, those many different types of stakeholders that are making the difference. And to understand how people sell as well as how people buy is critical. We also work with leaders and teams at Global Performance Group. The idea of how do we help leaders maximize the contribution of every team member so that each person is truly contributing what he or she is hired to contribute. And how do we get teams to work more effectively with each other to surface and work through the most challenging situations. So as you go forward and think about what we've talked about today, think about it's really important to add value to every interaction. The dialogue is what creates the value, and it's not just in the questions you ask, it's also in the information that you share. So how do you do that in a way that has maximum impact? We appreciate your time today. Before we go any further, Will, we mentioned earlier that there would be time for questions. Do we have any questions that have come through from the audience?
Hey, Ron, yes, actually, we have a few here. The first one that I see is about finding the nuggets of value. So what is the best source or resource for finding nuggets of value? How do I find nuggets of value?
You know, it's an interesting question because there's so much information available to you out there right now. So we frequently encourage people to go to their marketing departments. We frequently ask people to talk to others, to their clients to find out what's working for them, to their colleagues in the field itself, to the periodicals to be able to read something and be able to share that with your customer either in a conversation or in an email. There is a huge resource out there for you today. The key is that it's a nugget of value to the person receiving it. So what you may find interesting may not be interesting to them. And so often we have to not only share the nugget, cite the source, where did you get it, but then explain in a clear, concise way how this can help them. If you can access the right information internally or with all of the information that's available to you, make sure that it's something that the customer is going to care about or find relevant or find useful or find interesting or enlightening. Then take the time to add and why for them. Don't assume that they know. Another question, Ruth?
Yeah, we also have another question about getting prospects on the phone to share nuggets of value. So how do we get prospects on the phone to share these nuggets of value?
You know, it's so interesting that, especially in these days of robocalls and everything else, we know who's calling. It's one of the reasons why nuggets of value are such a useful tool, because when I see the number come up of a salesperson who isn't trying to sell me something, but is there to help me, to help me co-create the right solution, my inclination to pick up the phone is so much stronger than if I figure that's somebody else who's calling with a problem or calling to sell me something or giving me their pitch. So that's one thing to be thinking about. The other thing to be thinking about is how can you use these nuggets of value in an email to schedule the Zoom call or the telephone call? Is there a way to provide this insight with a clear, so what, why this is important to you, and an invitation to delve further? It could be a way to encourage people to pick up the phone and talk to you. I think the other thing is we've got to keep this as concise and precise as possible, because the one thing we hear from all of our clients universally these days is it seems like I'm being asked to do more with less time. So anybody who makes my job easier is somebody that I'm willing to talk to. Anybody who adds more time, more stress, more pressure, I don't have time for that anymore. I think we got time for one more question, Will, if there is one.
Yeah, there is. Last question here is, how do nuggets of value change with different types of stakeholders?
Oh, that's a good question, because as we've been saying, the nugget of value has to be relevant to the person receiving it. And it's tough today because we know no major decision is completed by any one individual today. There are almost always teams of people. And you may have financial buyers, you may have user buyers in there, you may have technical buyers in there. So how do we understand what's going to have impact for the team itself, the overarching corporate goals, as well as what may be the needs or concerns or interests of the individuals making the decisions? So we particularly want to understand in the decision-making process, the stakeholders, who has a high degree of interest in that they're not agnostic in terms of who the provider is, and who has a high degree of influence. Influence means they control the resources. They could say yes, they could say no. Obviously, if you've got somebody with a high degree of interest and a high degree of influence, those are the people that receive your maximum attention, and you're going to design more nuggets of value for him or her or them. Those people who have a high degree of interest but a very low degree of influence, we want to keep them informed as to how we're going to be helping them continue to do their jobs. And those who have a high degree of influence but little interest, they're supplier agnostic, we want to really focus the nuggets of value on how this enables them to reach the business goals, whether it's an EBITDA goal, whether it's profitability goal, whether it's a market penetration, growth goal, whatever the case may be. So that discovery phase, asking the striker questions to help identify and prioritize a deeper, broader set of needs, creates the opportunity for you to share exactly the right nuggets of value with these many different stakeholders that you're going to be dealing with. So our time's up. Promise not to take more than 30 minutes. The QR code in front of you is our invitation for you to join the user group, the LinkedIn user group for Global Performance Group. We've got people from lots of different companies in healthcare and technology and financial services and services, manufacturing. We're talking about what does it take to sell effectively today? How do you negotiate profitable, value-based, sustainable agreements? How do you create a compelling dialogue that moves the people to action focused on their outcomes? So take your camera, scan it, take a picture of the QR code. You'll automatically be entered, and we look forward to having you part of the group. And finally, we encourage you to attend the Salesforce Sales 3.0 conference by Selling Power Magazine. We're going to be one of the featured speakers. We're going to turn this conversation a little bit more towards procurement and how procurement has not only gained power and responsibility in many organizations in this age of COVID, but what that means to salespeople, what it means to the selling process. So join us December 10th and 11th. I think we're on at 11 o'clock Eastern time. There's go on site, check it out. Free pass available for you. Lots of good information coming to you. We encourage you to attend this virtual webinar, this virtual meeting. Great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciated the time to talk with you and look forward to speaking with you again.